Okay, it says we're live now.
We are live. Let's just confirm everything is coming in smoothly.
Yeah, guys, I think I pressed a button and stopped it by mistake, but that's fine. We only had a couple viewers, so I think we're just going to start again so we can get a clean take for YouTube.
Yes. Okay, so here we are. We are live, everybody. This is the Doug and Fur Show. My name is Doug Petrozelli, and this is my partner in truth,
Fernando.
All right, so today we're going to have a little bit of a topic that we believe is on our heart to talk about, and this is the transgender topic
Yeah, that's
today.
a tough one. Yeah, so as I said the first time, I think that's a very sensitive topic,
Right.
Because it's a very personal issue. It's something that people identify with personally or don't identify.
Right.
If you identify as a member of that community, right, that's a group that you feel like you belong to, and that's something that's very personal to you. And if someone speaks about it negatively, you personally feel attacked, and you feel negative towards what that person is saying, and you're closed off to what they have to say. And I'm the same way, and you're the same
Right.
way. We belong to any sort of group that we feel close to, right? And somebody attacks it, we're gonna get defensive, and we're not gonna want to listen to what they have to say. So I think when speaking about this issue, we're gonna be very careful in what we say, and we're gonna try to be very objective. So how do you want to lead this off?
Yeah, I want to talk about first and foremost, where do we draw this line from the personal perspective to the political perspective with the transgenders? Where does it come? Where is the line drawn between being compassionate or accepting somebody on a personal level for who they are, and then also being demanded through laws that I need to address somebody by their preferred pronouns.
Yeah.
Where is that line drawn exactly? Where do we come along as a society? There are bad things of treating people a bad way, and I want to be very pro free speech. And the point is, freedom is that freedom comes with cost. And there are a lot of things that I would like people not to say about me. But I also have to believe that I need to fight and be willing to die for someone's right to say those things, because without free speech, it's the foundational, it's the bedrock of who we are. So it's very, very complex, and big part of this show is going to be about censorship, or the foundations of what we're going to be talking about is in regards to censorship. So where do we draw this line between how we treat somebody as an individual and how we implement laws as far as being able to fine or even imprison people for using non-preferred pronouns?
Yeah, so I think right off the bat, like just straightforward to get it out there, I think that people, like you said, have the freedom. Is Amanda calling in?
That's
It's another Amanda.
That is a different one. That's
okay. So I think that people should have the freedom to do what they want as long as it doesn't affect someone else's life, liberty, or property.
Right.
And I think government shouldn't get involved in that. Right. So if you want to go out and play in the yard, the government shouldn't tell you what to do. And if you want to paint your hair orange, the government shouldn't tell you what to do. Whatever it is you want to do, you should be able to do. And aside from that, I think as moral and good people, we should accept, not accept people's choices as the right thing, but accept the person and love the person.
Sure.
Right. And this is actually something that's particular to the Christian faith, and I'm sure other faiths have it as well. But the Christian faith is based on loving others, and that's something that Jesus teaches. In a very famous example in the woman at the well, right? Which is, there was this woman who was caught in the act of adultery, and all of the religious leaders gather around and bring her to Jesus and say, hey, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. We should stone her, as is the custom, or sorry, not as is the custom, as the law says. And then Jesus bent down and started writing on the ground, and he said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Right? And then all of these people walked away. And then Jesus said, I don't condemn you, and then leave your life of sin, and he let her go, right? So he didn't condemn her, and he loved her. So even though her choice was wrong, he still loved her and accepted her. So,
but he also pushed her and led her in a direction of a new life as well.
So I want to clarify something. I'm not saying that being transgender is objectively wrong. Okay, I personally, in my belief system, which is of the Christian faith, I believe it is.
Right.
But that is not for me to define for everyone else. Right. So I'm not saying that it's objectively based on everyone else's belief system wrong. So You make your own choices. But what I'm saying is that even though I personally believe it's wrong,
Right.
I'm still going to accept and love the person. And I think that's all of our obligation to do.
Yeah. So I think there's a difference that we have to talk about, that not everything in life is politics, not everything in life is social. There are social institutions such as the church that would handle the topic of transgender a particular way, and there are the institutions that are of political, which basically, as far as I'm concerned, should be, should be, protecting life, liberty, and property,
Mm-hmm.
and those are secular institutions,
Mm-hmm.
and we need both. We need, for us to be a prosperous society, which I want to be, we need to be a virtuous society, and we need to be a free society.
Mm-hmm.
Government puts in checks and balances to help us become free, and social institutions are what promotes us to be virtuous. And for us to truly be prosperous, we need both. Even to say, for a government to for a society to truly be free, it can be more free even the more virtuous it is. So yes, even that just shows you how important our social institutions are.
Yeah.
That I would say that even the ability for a society to handle freedom takes virtue, and that comes from social institutions.
Yeah.
So there is a role in a conversation that, from a church's perspective, from a religious perspective, that would be, and I do have my thoughts, my true beliefs in my heart about that. And there's also a perspective of how we are to deal with that from a political perspective, of an individual perspective. And even if you are a religious person, such as we are, the Bible is very clear about how we handle somebody who are outside of that religion.
Yeah, exactly.
And essentially, they're not held to any standard. There is no standard for the world. There is a standard for the believers, and it's our job as believers to compel, to encourage people who are on the outside to come into that. And there is a standard that we all hold one another to.
So as with anything, there's a social aspect and the political aspect, right? Sure. So to begin with, I'm going to get a little bit into it here.
Yeah.
I think that everything at the end, all disagreements when it comes to the left and the right, and just in general, usually break down to one particular disagreement about a definition. So I'm going to give an example with abortion really quick, and we'll get into abortion another time, right?
Yeah.
So pro-life will say things like, abortion is murder, you're a murderer.
Right.
Right? And pro-choice will say, well, it's my body, my choice, why are you taking away my choice?
Right.
Right? And it's like these two ideas clash, and they're unreasonable. And the reason they're unreasonable is because they're failing to understand where the difference actually lies, right?
Right.
If you're saying abortion is murder, well, the other person doesn't believe that the fetus is a life. So if it's not a life, it's not murder. So when you're saying abortion is murder, that person's not reasoning with your argument, because they're like, I'm not committing murder because I'm not taking away a life.
Right.
And in the same way, when they say my body, my choice, right? Well, the conservative thinks, well, it's not your choice because it's not your body. The fetus is a life.
Right.
So this is where the argument breaks down, is where does life begin?
Right.
We need to define life, right? And I think that the same thing happens when we're talking about transgender.
Right.
So we need to find out where that disagreement is, right? Where do we find that line?
Right.
I think with this particular issue, what happens is that the people that believe that transgenderism should be a personal choice and should not be included in politics, what they're saying is that, hey, transgenderism is not something that is true. It's something that is, I don't want to say mental disorder, but it's something that you can feel yourself, but it's just not the objective reality. And someone who is transgender will say, well, no, this is my objective reality. This is my truth, and you need to accept it. So I think that the difference in definition lies as to where we define transgenderism as opposed to gender dysphoria.
Right.
Right. So what are your thoughts on gender dysphoria, right?
I mean, gender dysphoria, that's in the DSM-5, which, for those who don't know, that is, basically a book of identifying mental illnesses.
I can switch to it. Yeah, we can look it up right here.
So are we still getting audio, though? Is that working? Because I know we were having issues
we're getting
last
audio.
time. We are. Okay, so anybody who doesn't know that, it has been categorized as a mental illness for forever. It's actually just been recent, and maybe some perspectives of social psychology that it's now being determined as an alternative lifestyle. So where do I draw this line? Of where that is. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not here to, or nor have I studied that deeply. But I would agree that there is some type of mental illness with
Yeah.
that, just in the places that I've studied that I understand. That's me personally. Now,
So just really quickly, what it says here,
yeah,
it says a concept designated in the DSM-5 as clinically significant distress or impairment related to a strong desire to be of another gender, which may include desire to change primary and or secondary sex characteristics. Not all transgender or gender diverse people experience dysphoria. So I think the big thing here, right, is where we define gender, right? So conservatives, or I don't want to say conservatives because that's classifying the group. I'd say people in one side of the aisle will say there are only two genders.
right,
And people on the other side of the aisle will say there are 76 or 100 or an infinite amount
Right.
of genders, right? Well, the definition, the breakdown happens in the definition of gender.
right,
So, to someone who believes there are only two genders, gender is synonymous with sex,
right,
right? So, your sex is your gender. That's a synonym. Those two words are synonyms.
right.
But to someone who's on the other side of the aisle, it's sex is what you're born with, not including disorders such as like hermaphrodites and
Right,
stuff like
right,
that.
which is a very small percentage.
So that's what you're born with, and gender is an identity thing. So that's where the difference lies in that definition. Historically speaking, gender was always synonymous with sex, and in the recent years, we started to see a shift, a trend into gender being defined as something else, being defined more as of an identity thing.
Right,
I personally think that definitions change all the time. Throughout all of history, definitions change. And I think definitions changing is something that is okay. But I think in certain cases, definitions changing don't do anything good. Instead, they take away meaning or they add confusion.
right,
So, but I mean, sure, over time, I think the S word, which I'm not going to say here on air, but it didn't used to be a bad word, and little by little, it became a bad word to the point where you can't say it on public radio and on TV and stuff like that, right?
right.
So definitions literally change over
Right.
time, right? So I think the question is here, should the definition of gender be accepted as an identity trait, or should it stay synonymous with sex? I think that's a personal opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, to me, I mean, we obviously have to identify biological sex. So at least that is something that even people that I completely disagree with, we find common ground. We do believe that there's objectively a biological difference between somebody who is born with male genitalia and someone who is born with female genitalia.
Mhm.
I think that we're getting to that because there's so much science that has come to the argument, and now we're actually coming to a place where that new argument is coming where, well, they're not synonymous anymore. That gender is an identity, and it's not synonymous with what your actual sex organs are. So I think that's kind of actually hopeful to me, because we're building off of a common ground that we realize that there are biological differences at birth.
Of course, I think everyone would agree with that, right?
Right,
They're
right,
not
well,
the same.
Right. Well, it's been from conservative pushback that has been an argument that's developed.
Exactly. So that needs to be clarified, right?
Right,
So I
right.
think everyone would agree with that, and if you don't, then we need to find some other sort
Right,
of common
right,
ground, because
exactly.
they're definitely different.
Right. So
Right.
so that being said, what do we do as a political standpoint? I think that crime is crime. I think that hate crime. Just real quick, because one of the transgender demands is putting trans hate crime, like adding the trans, like assault on trans being that added to a hate crime bill. I think that hate crime in general is idiotic. I think crime is crime. I would say that almost any crime that is committed that's a violent act is not because you love that person. And I think that all violent crime should be punished very harshly. We need
Yeah, I
to
see what
make a
you're saying.
deterrent of that. So I don't, I'm much more like I've said before, very libertarian mindset. If somebody wants to do these things, if they really believe that they're a man stuck in a woman's body, or vice versa, or all these other things, like, it's not really on me from a political standpoint to say any of these things to them, to really try to enforce that their mind be changed.
Yeah.
Now, as a Christian, as a believer, as a person that is doing something from a religious perspective, which I need to operate in both. I think that we need to operate from a place of societal, where we are having relationships with people and we are influencing our faith in that way. If somebody doesn't want it, we need to politely respect that. But there are political rules, there are laws that need to be held. And what are those laws kind of drawn? I'm saying if someone rejects my faith, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be operating in this world just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
They should be free to do that. But that being said, I don't believe that just as much as me, I don't want your rules being crammed down on me by the force of the state. I don't want my rules being forced and crammed down you by force of the state. You can compel me. You can try to encourage me. I doubt that that's going to happen. I think I have my mind made up on this area, but that doesn't mean I treat you differently. That doesn't mean you're not qualified to do
we love each
jobs.
other.
That doesn't mean I don't treat you with dignity and respect. I want you to have free speech and right to property and right to do all the things that I can do. And that's what I'm looking for.
So I think getting back to this definition issue, right? So I think historically speaking, right, transgenderism wasn't something that was accepted as an identity, but more of as a mental disorder called gender dysphoria, right? A psychological mental disorder. And I think at the end of the day, any definitions that we give are given by a group of people that are experts in the field. So a species is a species because a taxonomist decides that they're a species. They have a certain set of rules that they follow. I mean, they're not going to say an orangutan and a gorilla are of the same species because they follow a certain set of rules. But at the end of the day, someone makes these classifications, right? And I think with disorders, it's similar. So there is an association or a group of psychologists that put out studies, and they have a set of rules on defining disorders, right?
Right.
And as time progresses and technology advances and new studies are done, things can change, and something that used to be a disorder maybe is treated differently, or something that wasn't known about before is now like, oh, that's actually a mental disorder. So I think that there's something interesting with gender dysphoria, because what it seems like is like, it doesn't seem like a group of educated psychologists is pushing for a change from gender dysphoria being a mental disorder to it being something that is totally okay and acceptable.
An alternative lifestyle.
Exactly. I think that it's not, the push isn't coming from there, it's coming from the people in that group.
Right.
So it's like, it's similar to this. Say all the people that suffer from schizophrenia or depression, they decide to say, hey, this is a lifestyle, this is what I chose. It's not a disorder, this is who I am. And the psychological community is saying, like, no, like, we're the experts on this. We never said that, right? So, listen, I think that if you have any sort of disorder or any sort of not even a disorder, some sort of mental health issue or anything like that, it is within your right to either accept or refuse treatment, or even believe that you have any disorder at all. Right. So if you suffer from depression or schizophrenia, and you're within your right to say, whatever, I'm schizophrenic, and that's who I am, and that's my identity, and that's not a disorder, it's just who I am. I think you're well within your right to do that. You can do it if you want to. I think the issue comes in when you push that idea down on other people and start pushing it as objective reality, because now laws need to be made regarding that.
Right. Like, so for instance, somebody could say that, I'm very depressed unless I'm around a bunch of people wearing yellow shirts. This is just a random example, okay? But if I'm around people who are wearing yellow shirts, my depression goes away. And I don't want to seek other alternative treatments. I just want to be around people wearing yellow shirts.
Great.
Then the idea that it could be pushed on me by force and power of the state that I need to wear a yellow shirt so that depressed people can feel better, that is not really my problem. That is actually their problem.
That's a beautiful example.
It's not really my job to make sure that I'm wearing a yellow shirt so that they can feel okay. should I treat that person with compassion? I would wish somebody in that state Godspeed in the recovery, but it is not to change all of society for the individual's issue.
Exactly.
That's something that is there. We all at that point, where does the line get drawn where you're just shifting and changing society? Because there's so many multiple issues that could be happening, and that goes with the example of demanding by force of the state being able to find me if I choose not to, use somebody's preferred pronoun. That's one. That's a huge issue I have. Two, that's a constitutional issue. That is a freedom of speech issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that using your yellow shirt example, right? It's within your choice on whether or not you want to wear a yellow shirt. I think if it's a friend, right, I would personally wear the yellow shirt until they get better or help them find. This is me personally, and I think you're within your right to do so or not. Not because I'm condoning their thing, but I think that it might help relieve their depression, and I would encourage them to seek counseling as well. Right. Now, this depends. It's a very specific scenario. Maybe I've been doing it for 20 years, and I'm like, dude, I'm tired of yellow shirts.
Right.
So I think similarly with this movement, right? I personally don't know anyone who's transgender who identifies as their opposite of biological sex. So I've never had the issue of addressing someone by a different pronoun than what I would intuitively call them by. I've never had that scenario thrown on me. I want to say that if they would like for me to call them another pronoun, I would probably do it, or I might forget, but I would probably do it because that's what they want. I would do it, whatever.
Right.
But I definitely disagree with fining someone.
Right.
Because then that goes back to what we're saying. You're forcing society to accept something that is not objective reality.
Right.
The truth is, just because you feel like you're one thing doesn't mean that you are.
Right.
Just because I feel like I'm 19 years old doesn't mean I am.
Right.
And if I feel like I'm 60, I'm not.
Right.
And it's okay. If I want to feel that, fine. I can feel it, and I can dress up like a 3-year-old, and I can whatever.
Whatever you want to do.
But we can't force everyone else to treat me that way.
Right.
Because then that would mean, like, let's say I feel like I'm black and I'm not Hispanic, right? Now I can apply for black scholarships.
Right.
Or if I feel like I'm 21 but I'm actually 18, can I go out and drink? Because essentially that's what we're saying. The state needs to respect what you feel as reality.
Right. And that's where I have a problem. And I just want to be clear. Like, I have actually ran into and had multiple encounters with transgenders. I've even, I've had I worked for the city of Lake Worth almost a decade ago now, and the city manager was a trans that actually had the reassignment surgery. I had no problem respecting and addressing the individual as her. I had no problem treating that person with dignity and respect. But I'm also, like you said before, I totally disagree if somebody wants to demand that I do that or can fine me $100 if I don't do that. There's plenty of things people, like I've said before, that people can say all type of horrible things about me that I don't particularly like. But I can't, demand that somebody, is fined by the government because they've said things I don't like. Because all this to say, it goes to the point of freedom of speech.
Yeah,
it is encroaching on the freedom of speech, and that is one of the most precious and most valuable things we have.
I think Canada's doing that, right?
Canada is doing it. They've been trying to do it in certain states in this union, and they have many of these issues in European nations where they are encroaching on the freedom of speech.
Yeah, and I think the problem with that is that we keep on opening the doors for new things, right? And new things that are not good.
Right.
So let's say in Canada, right now it only has to do with pronouns, but what's to stop it there, right?
Right.
What if I want you to call me, I think from How I Met Your Mother, right? Captain Awesome McSuperville, I don't remember, right? And if you don't, I'm going to fine you $100, and the state's going to fine because you're not calling me by what I want to be called.
Right.
And where do you stop, like, your feelings being forced upon someone else? Now, I know to someone who's transgender, me calling it a feeling might sound offensive, right? So when I say feeling, I'm not invalidating that belief that you have. What I mean is that you're either born male or female, or in some extreme cases a hermaphrodite, but male or female, right? and then your belief about what you really are. So if you're born male and you believe you're a female,
Right.
that's what I'm calling a feeling, right? I'm not saying it's not important, but that's what I mean when I say feeling.
Right.
It's not the truth. The truth is you're male,
Right.
and you feel like you're female, and that goes back to gender dysphoria. That's
Right.
literally what gender dysphoria means. You feel distress because you're not what you think you are.
Right.
Right. So then you go ahead and you get the gender reassignment surgery. So that's what people do, and I think that's what I mean when I say feeling. Right.
Right.
It's not objective reality.
Right. Right. And one of the other things on going back to the free speech issue, when you start encroaching that already is affecting religious, religious institutions, which is very important. Now, I am asked to speak at my church on, gender dysphoria or transgender. There are things that I have to say because I have true convictions from the Bible, biblical, that I should have every right to say. That doesn't mean I should be rude. I should have the right to be rude just as much as somebody has the right to be rude back, because that's what free speech does. Now, we have religious institutions that should be teaching virtue that we don't, that we teach things and we say them with respect and kindness, but there are convictions that we should be allowed to have. That's what pushes us through. These are already issues that are starting to happen in what you would call free countries around the world, where the churches are being mandated saying you can't say this according to their religious freedoms.
Yeah.
Their religious freedoms are being encroached upon. What has made Western society what it is, why they've been able to handle so much freedom, is because of Western society's culture and virtue. That has come from freedom of religion. That's come from freedom of religious institutions to produce virtue. Have they always been perfect? No. I am not saying they've been perfect. There's been issues throughout the centuries with religious societies, but it's the first one that has produced that. The freedom, as time goes over, that has produced what we see in the Western world. And I would challenge anyone to say, why haven't we seen it anywhere else? Because there is no freedom of religion anywhere else outside of the Western world.
I think recently other countries are trying to do
Right.
it, but it just takes a mass shift in
Well, it takes
cultural
time.
perspective.
It takes time for a religious institution to influence.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if they produce freedom, like Turkey, for example, Turkey is completely politically and lawfully free to start a church. Yet this is generations of individuals who don't believe in that. They believe that it should be against the law to be anything other than Islam, to practice Islam. So that does take time. But I do encourage that. I hope that over time that becomes more liberalized, because I do believe in liberal theory, which basically says that you give people freedom, and over time that freedom has the ability, not that it necessarily will, but it has the ability to produce prosperity and spread freedom, which is what we've seen in the West.
Yeah. So with this whole gender dysphoria thing and about gender, the fact that, or the idea that you feel a different gender than the sex that you actually are, right?
Right.
So now if we can agree that it is not objective reality, right? Meaning, if you feel you're female, so you say, hey, my gender is female, but your sex is male, then that's just not objective reality. And
right.
and if that offends you, then let me use another example, right? What's to stop me from saying, like I used earlier, I feel like I'm 19, even though my real age is 29, right?
Right.
What's to stop me from saying that? And what's to stop me from saying, like, I feel like I'm anything else than I'm not? I feel like reality is this, but truly it is this. What's to define that line? Right. And I think this whole sort of thing, when you don't see the world for what it really is, I think it's something psychological, maybe something dissociative. If you know what it is, put it in the chat. But what I think is, we cannot, as a society, push laws that force everyone else to accept your truth if your truth is just not reality.
Right. Well, there's consequences to that. Then there's no law, there's no order, there's no stability,
Exactly.
there's not even real ability for us to handle freedom, and there's no ability to produce prosperity once we get rid of this.
Because what if, like, from the other side, you get somebody who says, "Well, I feel like everyone who doesn't identify with their true sex should be put to death," right? And it's like, well, we have to respect your feelings too.
Right.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
And what do we do with these laws that involve you feeling an identity of something that you're not? Like I mentioned earlier, right? Why can't I drink when I'm 15 if I feel like I'm 22?
Right.
And it just becomes an issue.
Right. We need laws. We need order. We need things that the word specifically is escaping me at the moment. But we need things and values that we understand to be objective truth, which do exist, and we need to follow and abide by those things. That's the only way to, move forward in the society, and that's why I always go back to life, liberty, and property. If those things are not being affected, then the government really has no say. And if somebody disagrees with me, like, I need to be okay with that. Like, until it's affecting life, liberty, and property, it could be a lot of things I don't like, but I really shouldn't be trying to enforce that. I need to be a person that, uses my freedom of speech back to combat that, compel that, and not just wish to shut somebody up. And you know what? They have the freedom to do the same back to me. But that's freedom. That's what the United States has been built off of. That's what the, free and decent societies that have produced more wealth, more prosperity, higher standards of living. It's those ideas that have made this world what it is today.
Yeah, and I think that if you do feel or if you do identify as something that isn't the true objective reality, so if you identify as male but you're truly your sex is female, right? I think that you should have the freedom to do whatever you want. If you want to get reassignment surgery, go for it.
Right.
If you want to live in that your own truth, then you feel free to do so. If you want to seek counseling, then feel free to do so.
Right.
I'm not going to push my belief on you. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
From a political
standpoint, yes.
As a personal and religious standpoint.
Exactly. Court mandated counseling because you identify as something you're not. You should be free to make that choice.
Right.
From my own personal conviction and belief, I would personally encourage you to seek counseling because you're just not seeing reality for what it is.
Right.
But that's from my own personal conviction. I don't want you to be offended by that. That's just my own personal conviction, and I think we're allowed to disagree there.
Yeah, so. I think that's great. Now, what do we talk about when it comes to gender? Because there's two things I want to talk about with this real quick. I want to touch on when it comes to reassignment surgery. I want to touch on age of consent, and I want to touch on healthcare, demanding healthcare providers. So let's talk about age of consent first. Where is the line drawn? Because we said before, if somebody wants to have gender reassignment surgery, which we talked about before, is literally, changing out sex organs, and you actually start to look like a man, or you really look like a woman, whatever it is. I'm not 100% on how all the procedures go, but that's what it is. I think personally, if that's what you want to do, you should be allowed to do it. However, there is an age of consent. We don't allow somebody under the age of 18 to get tattoos. And there's a reason. Yeah, you need to be 18 to get a tattoo.
Are you?
Yes.
Is that true for real?
No, it is. I have 7 tattoos, and I have to show my ID every time.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that because I know some people that are under 18 that have gotten it, but it's probably with parental.
There's a parental waiver, yes. But I do believe under 16 in the state of Florida, there's no parental waiver. Wow. So we do need to come up with an age of consent, and I would like it to be 18 or 21, but however, whatever the case may be, we as a society need to come up with an age of consent to determine when it is okay to do gender reassignment surgery.
Age of consent is so tricky with everything, not just with this, but with everything, because everyone grows and matures at their own pace. Like some people, like I personally, I act like I'm 10 years younger than what I am, right? And there are some people that are 15 that act like they're 30, and the brain is always changing and adapting. But as a society, we can't have like a judge be like, you're mature enough. No, you're not mature enough.
Right. We need
to
objective.
Just draw a line. Right. And I think that, personally, I think that 18 is a good age.
Right.
Not because, I mean, I think someone who's 18 years old is still really young and doesn't make good decisions,
Right.
and we see this in a lot of things, but I mean that seems to be the standard line for pretty much everything aside from drinking,
Right.
and owning a pistol in the state of Florida and having a concealed license. 18 is pretty much
Our standard.
the standard for pretty much almost everything. So I mean, I would be okay with that.
Right, right. So I mean, what would you say to a parent who says, "Oh, my child is 6 years old. He was born a biological male, wants to have gender reassignment surgery to become a biological female." That is a non-reversible surgery.
Yeah, I think that there are some things which have an age of consent to be able to do things by yourself, and then if you want to do it before that age, as long as you get parental consent, it's okay. But there are some things that even when you get parental consent, there's still a minimum age. Marriage is one of them.
Marriage, tattoos.
Yeah, I think with marriage in the state of Florida, I'm not sure, but I think the age is 15. So you can't get married under the age of 18 unless you have parental consent. But even with parental consent, you can't get married younger than 15. I think the age is 15,
Right.
but that's not what's important. The idea is that there is a minimum, regardless. Right. And I think with gender reassignment surgery, it should be similar because, I mean...
These are permanent changes.
Yeah, the honest truth is that there are some parents out there that
there are people who abuse their children.
Yeah, and don't make the best choices. And someone who truly believes these things, and then your child is one day putting on heels, he's playing with mommy's heels, and then mom's like, okay, well, I'm gonna take him to get the reassignment surgery.
Right.
I think that's very damaging to the child, because then when they grow up later on, I mean, maybe they do feel like, oh yeah, I did the right thing, but more than likely, based on statistics, I would say they're probably going to be like, wow, why did I do that? Why did my mom let me do it? These are permanent changes.
Right.
So I definitely think that there should be a minimum age. I'm just throwing a ballpark number out there. I would say 16, but that's for the courts to decide.
Well, that's for us to vote people in power who are going to sign judges to do such things. That's us as individuals. And, I would vote my way, and, you will vote your way. But the point is that I think that we would all agree that we do need age of consent. At what point do you draw the line? Where we could just talk about having sex with minors. Where does that line get drawn?
Mm-hmm.
And we have laws that are very specific for that. It's like, if you're 18, I forget where they're all different at different ages.
In different states, too.
In different states. You're like 18 and 17, it's like, well, one's a minor, one's not. But there are cutouts in the law that it's not as a severe of an issue. But where do you draw the line? 14 is a way bigger difference. 12 is a way bigger difference, even if that person is 18. Where are these lines drawn? We have to figure out those laws for the age of consent. Where that looks like, and that goes all across the board. When it's consenting to the use of alcohol, when it's consenting to the use of tobacco, all these things, having a tattoo, driving a car, these are all things that we need an age of consent. Could a 15 or 14-year-old drive a car? Some of them, maybe, but where will we draw the line? Some of them can't. There's some 16-year-olds that probably can't do it very well, but we do need to come to this common ground. We need to come together and say there is an age of consent for these gender reassignment surgeries.
Yeah, definitely. Just because it's such a permanent change, and
Right.
I think that your brain is not even close to ready to make that type of choice when
Right.
you're 12, 13, whatever. And I think that anyone over the age of 25 would probably agree.
Yes.
When you were 13, you were not making the best choices.
No.
And you thought you were right, and you thought you knew everything, but truth be told, as the years went by, you're like, wow, I was an idiot.
Right, yes.
And that just keeps happening. By the time I'm 45, I'm going to be like, wow, when I was 29, I was an idiot. And that always happens, and you wish you could go back and take your choices back. So with something as permanent as this,
Right.
I think it's very important that we define a solid age of consent.
Right. And so the next part, did you have something else?
No, you
okay.
had a next
Yeah,
part
so
there.
the next point I want to talk about is where it comes to healthcare in regards to this. And this is not going to be directly on healthcare and government intervention on healthcare, but that will be another show in the future.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty simple. It's just as far as business goes, right? Businesses should have the right to provide whatever service they want. If gender reassignment surgery is something that's important to you, you should be allowed to find a healthcare provider that offers that. But the healthcare provider should not be forced to offer that.
Right, exactly.
I mean, very simple. If you own a business, you can do what you want with the business.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, but we shouldn't be having government mandates saying that you need to provide gender reassignment surgery. I think that it's fine for a consenting adult, whatever we define as adult, as a society, as a culture, through the laws of people who we elect. Um, they can do it with their own money.
yeah, I don't think
I believe
healthcare.
that.
I don't think healthcare providers should be forced to offer anything.
Right,
I think
exactly.
the free market would just take its place. If they don't want to offer life insurance, if they don't want to offer prescription coverage, right? Then don't
Exactly.
offer it, and then I'm just
Exactly.
gonna find someone else.
Exactly, and that's
and you're gonna go bankrupt.
Right. We don't
So-
want to see. We want to see free markets. We want to see freedom happen. So
And-
I
and-
think that's very important.
Yeah.
That's. It's kind of the point that we're making. Like, we want trans people to have the same rights that we have.
Exactly,
We don't want them to
exactly.
have more. We don't want them to be, because the whole point is, outside of life, liberty, and property. Once you're trying to take someone else, give somebody else's. When you're trying to give somebody else freedom at the expense of taking away from somebody else's, where I'm not okay.
Yeah,
with it.
exactly.
When
And
you're
I
taking
think,
away someone's life, liberty, or property for that,
And-
that's
and I
something I'm
think-
not okay with.
I think we go down a rabbit hole here if we start having the state force things on healthcare providers
Right.
and just on anybody, right? So, like, if I feel like I'm a dog, it's like I need this healthcare provider to provide me with dog reassignment surgery. I want them to implant fur in me and give me a tail.
Right.
And not out of my own money. The healthcare provider needs to provide that for me, and the state needs to force the healthcare provider to
Right.
provide that for me. And we can just keep on going down that
Right.
rabbit
Well, it's
hole.
also ultimately now that power exists for the government to wield, and now they can start to wield it in other areas of our
Exactly.
life, where the fact is this, where they're just demanding, individuals do X, Y, or Z. That's not America. That's not freedom. That doesn't equal prosperity. I don't want to live in that world.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to live in this world. That's why we've had more immigration to the West, never mind America, more than any mass migration in the entire history of the world has been due to these things. This
Yeah.
didn't happen magically. This didn't happen by chance. This happened because there was values that we came together, that we lived by. And this is just part of what we're doing here. We're doing this to influence not the whole world. We're here to influence our region, our neighborhood, the people that we know, that we care about.
Yeah.
We're influencing our community. And that's
So-
what.
I think this was a pretty easy short topic about healthcare. I think you had one more, right?
Yes. Well, I wanted to get to, what do they call it? The 1,000-pound elephant in the room. Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner, running as a Republican, running with values that, as an individual, from a political standpoint, I would agree with. Yet, they have chosen a lifestyle I disagree with. Where do we go with that?
I mean,
As
that just-
Republicans, we can go as a conservative, as a libertarian, as a Christian. Let's tackle them all. Where do we stand on
Yeah,
that?
I think this my personal decision is just
Right.
going to be true with everything we've been speaking about.
Sure.
Right. I don't care what you identify as. Can you do the job?
Right.
That's all I care about. I might disagree with your life choices, and I might have my own opinions on that, but I am not going to force them on you, legally speaking, and I'm not going to take away a job from you that you might otherwise be really good at doing.
Right.
So if I think Bruce prefers to be called Caitlyn, so I will do that. If Caitlyn Jenner wants to run for office and shares my same values and is going to do a good job, I mean, I don't live in California, but if I did, I would definitely vote for them. As long as they can do a good job and their values would align with mine, not in the sense of their own personal life choices, but for instance, if Caitlyn Jenner says, okay, I'm personally transgender, but I don't agree that the state should force others, like, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
And I don't agree with your personal choice. Like, I think that you have gender dysphoria, but I don't care about that.
Right.
Can you do a good job?
Right. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think the same thing applied with me when I voted for Trump, right?
Right.
Mean man, right? Orange, whatever. Mean tweets, does things that he shouldn't do.
Right.
Okay, did he do a good job? Like, that's all I care about. How was the market? How was unemployment? How is our situation in Israel and Syria?
Right.
Like,
How's our military?
How's our military? Those are all the things I cared about.
Right.
Whether he tweeted mean things or not, I don't care.
Right.
I mean, he did a few things that I didn't particularly agree with, but we're never going to find that someone
Right.
who we
There's
100%
always going to be
agree
somebody
with.
who does something political.
Yeah, I
we
think
disagree
between
with.
him and Hillary, I agreed with him more than I did Hillary.
Absolutely.
And I don't care that he's Republican, and I don't care that Hillary's Democrat. If Hillary's policies are more closely aligned with my views, I would have voted for her.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so breaking that down, conservative. I would identify myself as very personally Christian conservative. That does not affect my politics as much as many people would think it does.
Yeah.
From a Christian conservative perspective, that means that I live a conservative Christian lifestyle to
Yeah.
the best of my ability. I am imperfect, absolutely, but I do my best to implement that. From a religious platform, I am going to teach religious ideas in a very personal, in my personal platform, the one-on-one relationships. I am going to influence and promote religious ideas. Okay? Now, let's say there is somebody that I meet on the street that is rejecting those ideas. That doesn't mean that I hate that person. Let's say there's coworkers that I have that have rejected my conservative religious ideas. That doesn't mean that I don't treat them well or treat them with respect. That doesn't mean I don't befriend them, because the whole point would be, for me in the religion that I believe in the relationship with God that I have, is for me to compel them with love, and into this lifestyle, and that you correct once they've accepted Christ. That's when we start that correction. So, with me, as far as with what my thoughts on Caitlyn Jenner's lifestyle, that's exactly how I would handle that. If I met this individual on the street, I would treat them with respect and dignity. And the closer I got to them, my number one goal would not to get them to denounce transgender. My number one goal would get them to know Jesus, because we look at gender dysphoria or transgender as this ultimate sin. It's like, no, that's a sinner that needs Jesus Christ just as much as I do. And that would be my hope. And then from that place, from that acceptance of Christ, would it be to, compel and encourage and correct in all areas of life, just like me.
Yeah.
So that's my conservative perspective.
Yeah, like you're saying, what you're expressing here is your own personal belief, right? And that's what I think is very important. Differentiating that personal belief from what the platform of politics should do. I think my personal beliefs would align with yours, but again, if I was meeting Caitlyn Jenner and I was going to vote for her, I would vote for her depending on her policies, right? So like do your policies align with my beliefs? Again,
right?
Do I? And again, I think that she would suffer from gender dysphoria, but if she doesn't think that and she wants to continue living her lifestyle, then go for it.
Right. And then from political perspective, I'm very libertarian. Like you said, can she do the job? Is she gonna cut taxes? Is she gonna be stricter on immigration, creating merit-based policies, which means you're not just coming into the country just because you're coming into the country because we have a need. We need more doctors. We need more laborers. We need more, contractors, whatever it is. You're coming based on, hey, we need this need fulfilled in this state. You can come. Is this what you want? That's merit-based policy. Is this person going to do that? Is this person going to promote, law and order? These type of things are the things that I care about from a political perspective. You could have one heck of a crazy life, but do a job very well, and I'm okay with that. So I vote on policies. Yeah, is this a person? I mean, I don't know. I haven't read all their policies so far. She, I think that's what she wants to be called. There's a huge debate in conservatives of what do we do? Do we call him he? Do we call him she? If somebody wants to be called that, I will. I'm still identifying that, they have an issue. If you want to ask me if I think they have a mental illness, I do believe so.
Of course, yeah,
but
too.
That's okay. That she can disagree with me. I can still respect her. That's what she wants to be called. That's what she's going to be called. I'm going to respect it. I still think it is a mental illness, and I'm not going to encourage delusion. But that doesn't mean that we can't move forward and be decent and kind to one another. This is what I believe about this person. They can think I'm delusional, and that's okay because I'm a straight white male that believes in the institution of marriage and the Judeo-Christian values. That's okay. That doesn't mean we can't move along and get along. We need to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I believe very firmly in is this person, not going to go down the road of trans rights? Saying that, if you're a biological man identifying as a woman, can you play girls' sports? So far, she has denounced that. She said that is not going to be something that she does. That's not something that she endorses or cares to endorse. I would agree with that. So I vote on policy. If I'm going to a place, for morality, I go to my church.
Yeah.
When I go to a place on how we are to live as a society, that's in the realm of politics, and I think we need to separate the two.
I got to say something here about this. I think that they polled citizens or residents of California recently on who they would vote for, and I think the majority of them still prefer to have Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
So it's like that vote blue no matter who versus first transgender in office. And at first I was like, oh wow, that's kind of hypocritical. But then I started thinking about it. I personally think that's actually a good thing. I would prefer that a Republican be in office in California, obviously, but I think that it's consistent, right? They're voting on policy rather than the person, right? They're not going to vote Caitlyn Jenner just because she's a transgender and she would be the first transgender in office. No, they're going to vote someone who does the policies that they believe are best, even though I disagree with Gavin Newsom's policies entirely, or for the most part. At least the Democrats that are voting for him do it because they agree with the policies.
Right.
So, really quickly, I wanted to touch on transgenders in women's sports.
Yeah.
I wish we would have finished earlier, but this is a very important topic.
Yeah.
That I think is huge. So, go.
Yeah. So transgender in women's sports, I think that is completely unfair. We have too many, circumstances where we have seen, physical aspects. Even in this doesn't happen in the UFC, but in MMA fights around the world, where there has literally been a biological man. He didn't even have gender reassignment surgery, and he goes and fights a woman. I just can't see how that's fair. He almost killed her. It was just way too strong, way too powerful. And I don't want to say that there's never a woman that can, compete with a man. I'm sure there are several women in the UFC that could definitely beat up a man. But for a most part, biologically, what you're walking into this world with, as far as strength and endurance and bone structure, man has more of that than a woman, and that's just a reality. If you're upset with that, be upset with biology. That is something that I can't agree with. I don't think that that's trans rights. I think that that's that at that point, that's exactly providing more freedom for somebody at the expense of taking it away from someone else, from other girls. There's girls that have literally lost scholarships and placements that for their future due to trans competing. Yeah.
No, I have seen the argument on the other side is that this rarely happens. So I understand that it's not in the realm of sports. It's not as common as the media would like you to think. I think the conservative media pushes a lot oh my God, this is an epidemic or whatever, right? And it's really not. It's not that common. However, I think what we're arguing for here is not whether it's common or not. It's the fact that it's happening at all.
Right.
Because when it starts happening, then it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies, and it gets bigger and bigger, and it becomes more of an issue, right? It shouldn't be happening at all. What if you're that one girl, right, that was going to get that scholarship, and it's it barely happens, but it happened to you.
Right.
And it messed up your life.
Right. And just to give you a perspective, and I didn't realize the disparity of, athletics between men and women. They took the fastest woman in the world, and her time, what her time was in comparison to the fastest men in the world. She didn't come even close to other Olympians. She didn't come close to other colleges. And matter of fact, the top 300 high school guys are faster than the fastest woman in the world. Just to give you the disparity there. That is, there's just no competition at that point if this is happening. So even if it isn't the fastest biological man, transitioning, to be a part of female sports, at a major disadvantage. Even the fastest women in the world, who could probably outrun me, I'm sure. I actually looked at the time; she can outrun me by far. But the top high school guys are beating her time. Never mind the college guys and the Olympic and world record holding men. You
Yeah,
know? So
yeah.
that is something that we have to understand. There is a disparity. Men and women are different. Shocker. I'm sorry if that bothers you, but that's a reality, and we have to accept that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that, I mean, it's like if Usain Bolt, right, decided to get gender reassignment surgery.
Right, exactly.
And it's like whoever was close to beating him before, not even close.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, I definitely think that's a big talking point, and I think most people would agree that that's definitely something that should not be allowed. So I don't know why it's such an issue. Like, if most of us agree that it shouldn't be a thing, no matter what side, most Democrats I've spoken to and most liberals I've spoken to agree that biological males should not compete in women's sports.
Right.
So why is this even a thing, right?
Right,
and
right,
it's
right.
like it's like the small subset of the media blows it up and makes it this huge
Right,
thing.
right. We do want to say that this is, in reality, a fringe issue, but it is an issue that is in the limelight, and I think that we have a responsibility to address it, to encourage others of, how, we want to compel you to try to think and influence you, for you to influence others. But, obviously we always want to be challenged because we do not have all the answers.
Yep. So just to summarize that, I mean, like, if you identify as something other than your biological sex, right, I think you should have the same rights as everyone else.
Right. I think you should still play sports.
Yeah,
but you have to play sports in the
exactly.
biological sex. What you were born with, that is the gender. Whatever your biology is. If you're a biological man, you get to play men's sports. Biological woman, women's sports.
Yeah, and
I want you to have the same rights.
Yeah, same rights, same opportunities, same everything as everyone else, as long as we don't force your belief onto others.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's like I or like the girl the scholarship you're taking away from, she doesn't believe that you are female, right? She looks at you and you're male.
Right. Well, scientists don't believe that. Science doesn't believe
exactly.
that.
And now you're forcing that on her and taking away a great opportunity from her.
Right.
And I think every parent of females and girls sports, that holds a close.
Right. Absolutely.
That's close to them. So
right.
I would
I
definitely encourage.
think that when we're going to talk about what's fair, I think that's fair. And if somebody else has an argument against it and can really compel me as to how it is fair, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to talk with you about it.
In fact, with any of the talking points we said today, just because it is such a sensitive issue, if you have something to say that you think we're wrong, or that we may have misspoken, or that we may have offended you, or something like that, just know, like, we're doing our best to speak truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes the truth can be offensive, but we're trying to do it with kindness.
Yes.
So if we did offend you, or we did say something that you think we're straight up wrong, and please reach out, DM us. I mean,
please. You
can call this number here on the screen, and that will reach out to me, and I can reach out to Doug, and we can speak. We can even have you on the next show.
Yeah, we'd love you. So, just anything else, like always, please call us, DM us, reach out to us if you want to be on the show. We'd love to have you. We love having guests on the show. If you have topics that you want to hear about, you want to talk about, or you just want to hear us talk about, please reach out to us, and we will take those into consideration. But this has been a great show. I've had a really good time.
Same here.
This is the Doug and Fur Show.
All right, guys. Bye.